I now call a public meeting to order, and let the record show we have two commissioners present and one on the phone. You're there, Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes, Commissioner Robbins, I am. Can hear you fine.
Okay. And do we have anyone signed up to speak?
We have no one signed up for public comment.
No one signed up for public comment today. Is there anyone that forgot to sign up that wants to speak? Very good. We'll move into our consent agenda. Commissioner Briscoe, did you have you want to read the consent agenda, please, Diane?
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through J.
I neglected to announce when our next advisory committees are. Let me back up for a minute. The BIAC just met on the 13th, and they don't meet again till September 14th at 5 o'clock. And the Technical Advisory Committee meets the same time on the same date on the 14th at 9:30 in the morning. And our Marine Advisory Committee meets on September 12th in this room. So now that we've heard the consent agenda, Commissioner Briscoe, do you have any questions on the consent agenda?
Yeah, I do too. One on the All-American Marine Project with our travel route. I see we dug around and found, is this in addition to the cost we had budgeted for that route, or was that figured in when we did all the contract stuff here?
Good afternoon. There we go. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Adam Fulton, Director of Facilities. Commissioner, if I understand your question, is this new money or is it reallocated money? Is that your question?
Right. Was this figured in when we did this, or is this an additional cost to us for doing this?
There's actually, for the most part, yes. There's actually, I believe, a request for $75,000 worth of new money. However, most of it is just reallocated from other projects. Just to back up a little bit with the Commissioner, if the Commissioner recalls, perhaps 18 or 20 months ago, that whole project was located in Fairhaven. There was I can probably point you to 10 different budgets that are affected by that project in Fairhaven. And when it was uprooted, which I'm really glad we did, I'm really proud of our nimbleness and the innovation it took to do that. However, when we uprooted that project, moved it across the bay over to Hilton, it now affects some different budgets that are in around Squalicum Harbor. So for the most part, what we're doing here is just simply reallocating some of those budgets that were previously involved with the project, but needed to be reproportioned to different aspects of the project.
Okay, thank you, Adam. I just wanted to clarify that so people know what we're doing.
You're very welcome.
And then, Commissioner Robbins, I have a question on item I, Alaska Wild.
Yes.
Okay, I see we're modifying the use permit, and we're moving. Looks like we're gonna put some power in for them, and they're gonna pay that back. And I just, being as I'm not there, I haven't had a chance to talk to those folks. Is everyone at Alaska Wild good with everything we're doing?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Terry Lahi, Real Estate Representative. Yes, we've had meetings with Alaska Wild, and this does meet their requirements.
Okay. And I'm looking at the Exhibit 1A on the Gate 3 parking in Blaine, Washington, and we've got some little yellow highlighted areas there between the port office and Gate 3. Is that, which end of that are they moving to, or is that an option to be in all of that area, either one of those, either end of that area?
They'll be closer to the Gate 3 area because the power is connected over there.
Okay. And then so they'll get their power from the Gate 3 service house over there, and we'll move our stuff that's there now in the parking lot, and they'll have that whole corner there. Is that the plan?
They'll be right next to, I believe, there's an oil waste station there. So they'll be right next to that.
Okay. All right. Very good. This is a big deal for the harbor up in Blaine. It really is. Before I left, there was more and more people coming, and it's something that's been needed there for a long time. So I would say that the port should help those folks in any manner we can to make that business fly there. It's good for the harbor, and it's good for the city of Blaine. Thank you, Terry.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Terry. Any other questions, Commissioner Briscoe?
No, Commissioner Robbins, that's all I had. Thank you.
Commissioner McCauley, any questions?
I have none.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record show the consent agenda passes 3-0. And our next item is a presentation on Marine Park signage.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Hogan, Public Affairs Administrator. This is an issue with some of our Fairhaven signage. It was brought to our attention by a couple local history buffs and local historians that our signage is actually geographically inaccurate. And if you've spent any time around Bellingham, you'll know that sometimes the streets and geographical features can be confusing. But this is down in Fairhaven. And our sign points people to Post Point, and the Brian Griffin and Warren Bergholtz pointed out that this area is actually known as Pose Point, and Post Point is due south. You can see on the picture, and Post Point was historically a place where there was a 16-foot white pole for marine navigation. Pose Point, later came to be known as Dead Man's Point and Graveyard Point and Commercial Point, was there was a donation claim filed in the 1800s by a gentleman named Alonzo Poe, and he filed a claim for 303 acres in 1853. He was one of the first settlers in the area, and interestingly, there was an Indian raid on Whidbey Island. I don't know if you've ever been down to Ebby's Landing down there, but there was that raid where the Tlinkets, it was led by actually a female warrior, and they beheaded Isaac Abbey. It was a retaliation for a previous incident, and that whole episode unsettled the local residents, so they posted 2 people on top of Poe's Point. It was historically like an 80-90 foot bluff to look out for marauding Indians, and those 2 gentlemen drank a little too much whiskey and passed out, and they were actually killed by the Indians, and so that's when it became known as Dead Man's Point. That was in 1857. Alonzo Poe, shortly after moved to Olympia and deeded the property to his brother, Americus Poe. Americus ended up selling 43 acres, I think, to Dirty Dan, and then Dirty Dan sold that property, or a portion of that property, to the county for use as a cemetery, and they buried 63 people, and so then it became known as Graveyard Point. Those bodies were later dug up and relocated to Bayview Cemetery, and the whole area was graded for commercial activity when it became known as Commercial Point. But at any rate, there's kind of a rich history down there, and the local historians, Warren Bergholtz and Brian Griffin, brought that to our attention. And so we, looking at the history, what we're proposing to do is update the directional signage to change it from, this is a Photoshop, it doesn't actually look like this, but from Post Point to Pose Point, so it's historically accurate. And then also put in some interpretive signs down at Marine Park that discuss the history down and around that area. We worked with Brian Griffin and Dr. Bergholtz to make sure, and also Jeff Jewell at the Walking Museum of History and Art to make sure we had that history accurately represented. And Dr. Bergholtz actually celebrated his 100th birthday earlier this year and real popular in the community, so we thought it might be fitting to have some sort of public ceremony, and we haven't settled on a date, but in August or September down at Marine Park, and to unveil the new history signs and just thank them for their commitment to the area and making sure we're talking about the history correctly. So that's just a brief update. Oh, and also in the future, we've also kicked around doing some exhibit maybe at the Bellingham cruise terminal, maybe a TV screen that shows this is one of the cool pictures you've seen upstairs in our office of the Fairhaven shipyard. But maybe we could do some sort of interpretive exhibit at the cruise terminal. It's a good public facility. On the right, you'll see a picture. This was for the Carpenter Building demolition. This is part of the material that was salvaged. It's the old logo from Pacific American Fisheries, which, as you knew, grew to become the largest salmon cannery in the world. So a really rich history down in Fairhaven, and we have some good opportunities to help celebrate that history as part of our parks and open space and part of our transportation terminals. So I think that's it. Sylvia and I just wanted to give you a quick update about what we were doing, and if you have any questions, be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Mike. Commissioner Briscoe, any questions?
Yeah, I do have one. Basically, what is the cost to the public to change these signs? I take issue with running all over changing signs, and that I don't know what the cost is. The other thing I'd like to point out is there may well be a post point. I lived here all my life in South Bellingham, basically. Never heard it called post point. Heard it spoke of. And on the NOAA charts, and I have one in front of me right now on the computer screen, the post point is not even listed on there. It's called post point, and that's the furthest point that sticks out on the landmass there. So, I mean, this is all well and good, the history stuff and everything, but when it comes down to costing people money to change a name for this business, I would like to know what the cost is for it.
Yeah, Commissioner Briscoe, good question. So the sign that we're going to change from that's post point to pose point, that actually the signage needs to be updated anyway because we've had the change in tenants down at the shipyard with All American Marine moving. So we're in the process of changing that. Maybe Sylvia could speak to that, but it's part of a regular update when we change tenants or people move around. As far as the interpretive signs down on the waterfront, we've printed up interpretive signs before, and it's typically to get good outdoor quality signs printed up, it might be in the $100 to $150 range.
Okay. I just like to point out that everybody wants to change the names everywhere, that it does cost money. It's not free.
Right. And Sylvia, a good one here. We don't have an exact cost on the park, the sign at the entrance to the park, but the sign is already there. It already has a face on it. It does not say Fairhaven Shipyard, and we need to add that. So it's a minor. It's the cost of putting some stickable letters on a sign. We can get you a cost estimate, but I would understand it's pretty low, and we haven't actually got input from real estate, but I'm sure Shirley would be happy to pay for this sign.
No, I'm just curious if we're changing the whole sign. I mean, that wasn't laid up. We're just changing letters on the sign or changing the whole signboard. That wasn't pointed out.
Yeah, Commissioner Briscoe, apologize. Yeah, we're changing the lettering on the sign, and it's one of the signs that's directional, so that as tenants change over time, it's intended to change as well to reflect the accurate commercial activity down on the point.
Okay, so there'll be no reference to post point, which is out there also?
Well, we're going to, right now, currently the sign says post point, and then in parentheses below it says pose point. So we're proposing to change that to remove the post point and just call it pose point.
Okay. I disagree, but it's whatever. You can go ahead with what you're doing. But as long as I've been here, there's always been a post point there, and it's on the chart. So I'm thinking maybe it should be mentioned also. If you want to put post point in big letter, maybe you should put post point in small letters and abbreviation like it. Just reverse it. That would be my recommendation. Because there is post point out there. When you go out there, there is post point. Post point was more where the park is, and post point is just to the left of it. So anyhow, that's my recommendation, is you make sure post point is on there also somewhere.
Commissioner McCauley, do you have any comments?
I got a question for Commissioner Briscoe. So are you suggesting there's confusion between, that the sign should correct any confusion between pose point and post point?
Well, you've got the actual physical point is post point, where they had the post apparently. If you look on a nautical chart, and it says right just to the south of the park, just barely to the south of the park, a ways, is where post point was. And there is, on our nautical charts, the federal nautical charts, NOAA charts, there is no reference to pose point. It's post point. Now, I'm not saying that history buffs are wrong or anything, but I think that on a nautical chart, post point is there. And people are looking on maps, referencing things, and they're trying to figure out, where the pose point is. It's not on anything on the chart, but post point is. So I think it still should be referenced on that sign, so people using whatever type of map they're using, whether it's electronic or a paper map, to find, where this place is at, that the name that's on the maps or on charts is also listed on the sign.
Commissioner Briscoe, you bring up a good point. I guess the local historians their point is that the post point, historically, if you wanted to be accurate, it's located a little bit south of Pose Point. So it's one of these issues of, do we want to follow what's existing on the nautical chart, even though that may have been a, geographical error of where it was marked. Not looking at your chart, it's tough to say. We have a slide here with a map of the area that shows where that post point, historically where the 16-foot high post, the white post, was located, and then the pose point, which was the bluff that was leveled for commercial activity. And they're definitely two separate geographical areas. Now, there's, I sympathize that there's confusion among, we have Post Point Lagoon and we have, the nautical charts. So it's a challenge. Do we want to be, historically accurate of geographically where it was, or do we just want to continue to, even though I think that geographically it may have been misnamed Post Point, because the actual Post Point was located for navigation, and that was a bit farther south.
Well, I think what people were doing, they were generalizing the area, and people chose to generalize it as Post Point. I'm not saying anybody's wrong here. I'm just saying make sure that we have something so people are trying to figure out from a chart or from a map, whether it's electronic or physical, that area is still referenced also as Post Point. They're both together. On our nautical charts, right on what you have where it says Post Point, that white square box outlined in red, right at the bottom of that box on a nautical chart is where it says Post Point. So my recommendation still, as I stated, is I think we should have reference to Post Point there also.
So another question that I've got for Mike. Why are we naming this area generally at all?
Is that for me? Oh.
No, it's for Hogan.
Yeah, I mean, that could be an alternate solution to remove from our sign either Pose Point or Post Point and call it, the, Fairhaven,
Well, I'm not suggesting rename it. I'm just wondering why we are naming it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just this sign.
Yeah.
This is a directional sign to tell people where to go when they get to the end of the street.
And this came about because we've got some citizens in our community that think the current signage is wrong.
Yep.
So they approach staff and say, can we fix this signage? That's the genesis of this. Whether it has a name up there or not, I don't think it matters much to me or much to the rest of the staff either. This was a response to some community requests.
I certainly don't have a problem spending $200 or $300 to do this. History is always nice to have. I think this is an interesting history. Dr. Bergholz and Brian Griffin, both historians. Brian did the Village Green in Fairhaven, and he did the Market Depot. I would always yield to my elders for direction on history that I think makes sense. And I actually like the history of it. I think we can have still, people can refer to it as Post Point, but I think the history of Post Point should be there.
So I think we definitely have two good signs, interpretive signs that talk about the history of the area and, you know, how it came to become Bellingham's first waterfront park, and, you know, how the port got involved, and dating back to Alonzo Poe, Pacific American fisheries. So I think having those interpretive signs in Marine Park is a great idea, and I think that is a good, and it has some pictures of what the bluff used to look like before it was sluiced down. I guess the loggerhead we're at is what to do with our main directional sign here. I mean, I've heard we originally talked about changing it just to Poe's Point, so it was historically accurate. Commissioner Briscoe brings up a good point of, you know, well, if it's, you know, been known as Post Point, we don't want to confuse people. We could change it so Poe's Point's big and Post Point is small, or we could remove Poe's Point and Post Point off this sign and still do the historical interpretation sign down at Marine Park. And I think, yeah, we're
Let me put a little different perspective on it. We're keeping the Pacific American Fisheries sign, aren't we?
You mean the
PAF,
the logo that we salvaged?
and all that.
We do. We've salvaged that for potential
Used somewhere. Well,
yeah.
one could argue, why do that? It's now Fairhaven Shipyard. And I think you do it for the history. And so I see no problem in having this history as well. It just goes back a little bit farther. I think to keep both of those histories for a community is good.
Well, don't misunderstand me. I have no problem with the history. I'm just pointing out that you have conflicting things with maps and charts as to what point it is, and when people go there, they should have something, whether it's in small writing or large writing, that indicates that it's also Post Point. That's all I'm asking. I'm not saying not do the history. The history's good. I enjoy that. That's great. Just don't take Post Point away, you know, totally. Let people know that that's also Post Point as well as Post Point, which I think the sign already does. It's just people are arguing over what's in big and what's in little.
And my final question is, this came up some time ago, and I was completely in favor of renaming it Poe's Point, but there was some pushback because of what Commissioner Briscoe issues are. So how were those settled? Because I thought this was almost a permanent, we're not going to do it because of those issues.
The last time it came up, Dr. Bergholz asked us to rename Marine Park as Poe's Point Memorial Park, and the commission opted not to do that, and then said, well, we could address it through signage. But then there was this whole discussion about, well, should it say Post Point or Poe's Point, and so it never was resolved. But the commission direction at that time was not to rename Marine Park. And then there was an issue about the geographic naming board. If you're really naming a point, then you should go to the geographic naming board. We're not naming a point, we're just naming a piece of port property that happens to be located on an area that used to be known as Poe's Point. So we're not changing the name of Post Point. It is further south, and it's still there, and it's on the charts. We're not proposing that anything be added to a chart that says it's Poe's Point, and we're not changing the name of Post Point. We're just would be, if the commission direction is to do this, we would just be putting up a sign naming this area, which is really no different than naming the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park or Zwanich Park. We're not naming a geographic area. So that's how we resolve that issue of the geographic naming board.
Thank you. That's all I have.
That's all I have.
Oh, wait, are you needing direction from this?
We don't, We don't really need direction unless your direction is not to do it, and then we won't do it.
I personally, I don't like the dual post point thing that I'm looking at right here.
Right.
It just pose is fine with me.
That would be our preference also.
I would agree with Pose. We got direction?
Thank you, Commissioners.
Anything further? Commissioner Briscoe?
No.
Commissioner McCauley? No. Okay, very good. So our next item is our presentation on the financial report for the second quarter.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tamara Sobczak, Director of Finance. I've got the financial results as well as the other quarterly updates for you. I could hardly believe we're halfway through the year already. And you know what that means. Only 159 shopping days till Christmas.
There we go.
So,
there
yeah.
we go.
That's
Wow.
Is that the only joke we're going to get? That was it.
That's,
I was all ready for a good riddle today.
oh, next time.
Okay, thank you.
Man. Man, that was brutal. 159 days till Christmas, huh?
Okay, we'll let that settle in.
I'm still going to roll it.
So let's just dive right into the balance sheet. At the end of June, we had total assets of about $392 million. In comparison to 6 months before that, $393 million. So that's pretty stable, and it shows us that we are not using our resources for operations. Our revenues are taking care of our expenses, so that's pretty solid there. Looking at total liabilities, the end of June we had about $143 million as opposed to $146 million at the end of 2016. One thing I'd like to point out is the long-term liabilities are the same, or just about, and we expect to see that decrease as we make our bond payments. I just want to remind the Commission that we did take out a $2 million EDI loan in February for the C Street improvements. So that's that reason for that. So we ended the second quarter, net assets $248 million as opposed to $247, so still very stable there. Looking at that net asset trend, still going up. And I believe that when I was here reporting on the first quarter, I hadn't had the environmental liability adjustment for you yet. We were able to take off about $15 million in liability at the end of 2016 for all the good work that we did, environmental cleanup. So that's that spike that you're seeing there. So where do we have our cash? We have about $15 million, well, we have $15 million in federal investments. Those investments yield an average of 1.25%. The remaining of our investments are in the LGIP, just over $30 million. And that interest rate is also creeping up a bit. It's almost to 1%. Looking at revenues and expenses, so the first half of 2017, we brought in about $17.7 million in revenues. 12 of that was from operations, and 5 of that was from non-operating, and those are taxes and operating grants. One thing that's not included here is our second quarter of operating grants. We haven't posted those yet. Comparing that to a year ago, second quarter 2016, we had revenues of almost 12.3, so a little lower than before. And again, that $17 million, don't be alarmed, that was including second quarter grants. Looking at expenses for the first quarter, almost $7 million for operating, $1.5 million for our public priority division, and then about $8.5 million for non-operating, and those are, again, interest and grant-eligible environmental cleanups. Compared to 2016 second quarter, expenses are up just a bit, but we do expect that most divisions are very close to budget. So looking at aviation, revenues are under about $90,000 under budget from on revenues. The green column there is first quarter or second quarter of 17. The yellow is what we budgeted, and the blue is what we saw a year ago. So even though we're a little under budget in revenues, we are a little higher than we were in 2016. So not a terrible story there. Expenses are 130,000 under budget, just slightly over 16. So we're netting better than 16, but just a little lower than what we expect. Looking at the marinas, Squalicum revenues were right on target. Blaine was low. Recall we are going to do some targeted marketing this year to fill those vacancies in Blaine. As far as expenses go, we're tracking slightly under budget, but with Blaine revenues down, the net is a little less than we're expecting there. Marine terminals is the shipping terminal and cruise terminal. The shipping terminal revenues are a little higher than budgeted because we have a fishing vessel moored at berth 2 that we hadn't budgeted for. Those additional revenues didn't increase our costs, so our net is better than we expected or budgeted for. In the real estate division, the revenues look a little lower than budget, but that's not alarming. We had an annual concession tenant pay in July, so that'll even out. We're right where we expect. And these expenses are pretty standard, not much change year over year, and no surprises either. Overhead is kind of the same story as real estate. Expenses are pretty standard year over year. We haven't made any big changes. They're just right where they kind of always are. Public priorities, recall these are the tax-supported division. Revenues are right on budget. Expenses are a little bit lower. We're trying to do as much work in-house as possible and not use outside consultants when we don't need to. So that's the reason for that. Yeah. It is. Yep.
Tamara, the revenue is down compared to 2016?
It is. This does include the waterfront district.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so that's operating. Capital spending, for the first 6 months, we spent about $7.5 million on capital projects. Some of the bigger ones were $1.5 million on the All-American Marine, just putting the finishing touches on that relocation project. About $1.5 million on C Street. Recall we purchased a crane and did other upgrades down there. About $1 million at the shipping terminal. We re-roofed Warehouse 2 as well as some stormwater improvements. Got about $500,000 on the shipyard pier so far. That project is ramping up. And then we did about $400,000 on electrical upgrades at Gate 3 at Squalicum. Those were much needed electrical improvements. Right. Well worth it. So here are some photos of those capital projects. This is the Warehouse 2 at BST. Recall, I believe it was first quarter, we did some emergency repairs on the peak, but when we were up there doing those, they discovered that it really needed a full re-roof. And Cadence Construction has this contract, and it's just under $500,000. And then here's some the stormwater projects at the shipping terminal. We did some pavement and some other things. RAM Construction, a local contractor, has this contract, and the entire project's just under $2 million for the pavement, the bioswale, and then also we did some wharf treatment assemblies there for stormwater. And then Elite Electric did this project for us at Gate 3 at Squalicum Harbor. That was about $400,000, and I believe they're a local company. And then finally, we are just getting started on the Lignum building improvements. The building is emptied out. We're preparing for those upgrades. So that's it for the financial part. Is there any questions for me so far?
Commissioner Briscoe, any questions?
I heard him yawning. I think he fell asleep.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. There was some noise out here. I muted it. Very well explained. Thank you.
Okay, great. So looking at the safety report, we did have 2 recordable injuries, but these were from the first quarter, so no additional April through June. The recordable incident rate and the lost workday rate are 2.07 and 1.04 based on hours worked. The stormwater program consistent attainment was achieved, recall, in the third quarter of 2014. So we got a 3-year stay on the samples, and we'll be sampling again in October of this year. And we verified that all training and record keeping are in compliance. No major incidences through the second quarter of 17. But we do have a couple of things to report. We do still have that one open claim for the port, the windstorm. The repairs are on hold due to permitting issues, but the insurance company has made a preliminary partial payment so that when we're able to get started, we do have some money in the bank for that project.
What's the permitting issue?
The permits were, some of them were issued by the Corps of Engineers and then later withdrawn based on tribal objection.
Okay, thank you.
We do have 2 small open claims against the port, both just trips and falls, and our insurance company is handling both of those. The first one was that winter storm where the pedestrian slipped on the ice, and then the second one is also at the airport. Ran into a cable barrier, and we're addressing that. And finally, public disclosures. Requests this quarter, 42, 82 requests year to date. About 63 hours for the second quarter and about 100 hours total year to date spent on responding to these. And then we spent about $9,000 year to date responding to these requests. And Commission did ask last time I was up here, what kind of requests do we get? So here's the breakdown year to date. A lot of them are bid related documents. So contractors maybe who didn't get the low bid wants that information. Engineering drawings and studies, lease documents, some HR finance records, and then just some recurring requests that people request every time, every month or every quarter, and then just some random miscellaneous requests other than that.
So
Go ahead.
I'd like to dig in this just real quick. Maybe we'll have a deeper discussion later. So we've got a full-time staff person who has spent 63 hours all year on this. So
On direct requests.
just that.
Right. So are you asking what the other 2,000
Well, I mean, a
hours are
person
spent
that
on?
just randomly said, well, why do you have a full-time staff person that's just done a week and a half of work?
So the full-time staff person is really records management.
Okay.
So making sure we're in compliance with our retention schedules, making sure we're organized, digitizing some records, that.
One of the things you'll notice if you compare this to, say, 5 years ago, before we had a full-time staff person, is, first of all, the requests are down. But on the hours spent per request, I would guarantee you that this is much less hours spent because we're much more efficient at responding to these requests now that we have a records person keeping all our records organized. So we used to take more time to respond per request.
That was my question. How's this compared to a year ago in hours and requests?
I'm sorry, I didn't look. I don't know.
I believe, I can't tell you the hours because I don't track that closely, but I believe the requests are considerably down to where we were a year ago. It's definitely down to where we were in, say, the high years of 2012, 2013, when we just had huge amounts of requests handled by one person, half-time.
The other thing worth mentioning is now with a full-time person, we're tracking these requests. We're logging them. So the number may look bigger, but we're just recording every single request that comes in.
Thank you.
Yeah. So any further questions or comments for me?
Any questions, Commissioner Briscoe?
No, Commissioner Robbins, I have none. And thank you.
Cameron, can you flip back? There was a photo of, I think, the wharf down at the shipping terminal. Yes, that one. You said there was some stormwater work done? Is that what this is? I haven't been down there in a couple of months, so I'm not entirely certain what I'm looking at.
I'll let Adam speak to that.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. Adam Fulton, Director of Facilities. The Commissioner asks if there are stormwater work occurring at the shipping terminal. Yeah, so the commissioner might recall that Port staff secured 2 grants, $1 million at the C Street for the C Street terminal and $1.5 million for the shipping terminal from the Environmental Legacy Stewardship Account created at the state level. And with that money, we basically regraded the shipping terminal and directed the affluent to various treatment schemes. This one's actually incomplete. What you're seeing there is to your left, or straight in front of you there is warehouse 1. To your left would be warehouse 2. So the stormwater now flows across that new pavement. This concrete trough you're seeing is sort of a, it handles the larger materials and gathers them. And then through wheat poles, you can actually kind of see them right along this seam right here. And the water sort of seeps through those, through this rock, and then what you're not seeing is this will be planted with a media filtration system, which basically has a large bioswale. And that is actually treating one of our 8 basins. This is basin 3 at the shipping terminal. That is basin 3 looking at the pavement there. And then the commissioner might recall also out on our shipping pier itself, we're kind of piloting a program. It was sort of a pickle that ecology required us to do this treatment out on our shipping terminal, but was not willing to pay for it under the ELSA grant. So we came up with what we think is an economical way to treat at least one berth of the shipping terminal. And what the commissioner is seeing there are troughs that are constructed off the edge of the pier. The stormwater flows across the pier and then is guided into each of these treatment facilities. And in those is again, another biofiltration system. And the water enters that and then again bleeds out to the bay. And this grading you're seeing is just so that longshoremen and workers, et cetera, can walk all over this. It's very durable. Does that help?
Has the state seen this?
Is Leaf here? Not yet. Thank you. Does the commissioner have any further questions?
It's kind of fun to be a pilot, but how do you know if it's working?
Yeah, the reason we know it's working or not is by building a baseline of sampling, both before and then after it's installed. And so we will develop a history as we go along here. So.
Do these just drain through something at the bottom, or is there a single point of exit here?
No, there's not really a single point of exit. It actually, you can't see it. It'd be out on the outboard side where there are weep holes that the effluent can then escape once it's been treated. So we would sample from those locations.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Briscoe, any other questions?
No, very well explained. Thank you, Adam.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.
Okay. It's time for the break unless you gentlemen want to tackle anything else at this time.
I'm okay with a break.
Okay, we will. How about you, Commissioner Briscoe? You want to tackle something now or you want a break?
No, I'm good with a break. Thanks.
Okay, we are adjourned until 5:30.
Commissioner Briscoe? Can you hear me? Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Check.
Hello. Can you
Yes.
hear me now?
We can hear you.
I'm ready.
Okay. Call the meeting back to order. First item is public comment. Do we have anyone signed up? And no one who's here, so we'll move on to our action item. Diane, if you could, please.
A motion to authorize the executive director to reallocate budgets per the fiscal impact section and execute a contract with Cadence Construction Incorporated of Seattle, Washington for the Blaine Webhouse siding and roofing project in the amount of $442,354.50, plus a 15% contingency for a total authorized contract amount of $509,000.
Commissioners, John Gibson, project engineer. I just wanted to provide a quick overview of what this project is going to entail. This will be occurring down in Blaine at Webhouse 2 and 3. Webhouse 2, the roof has sustained some serious damage from windstorms. The built-up roof that's on the two awnings on the sides there was ripped off in the southeast corner. And additionally, the metal roofing on the southeast corner was torn up in a few places. So this project will rip off the built-up roofing and repair any damaged or rotted sheathing, and then put a new TPO membrane over that awning area. The existing metal roof was found to be in pretty good shape. Some of the fasteners are starting to corrode, and so we have an additive alternate to replace those fasteners. At the same time, we have additive alternates for painting the fascia and the side of both sides of the building. I think that one of the commissioners actually asked for us to obtain pricing on that. These are just some close-up photos of some of the damage. You can see the metal roofing was ripped off and is crumpled and bent in other areas. And then this photo shows some of the emergency repairs that were put in place just to hold the built-up roofing down during the windstorm. Moving on to Webhouse 3, this building is front and center when visitors arrive at our Blaine Harbor. And currently it's a bit of an eyesore. The paint is peeling off and a lot of the siding and doors are starting to rot. So it's definitely time to give it some attention. The roof is past its design life, so this project will include replacing that with a new TPO membrane. And additionally, we will install new siding and new doors. Our architect and the harbor master worked closely together to develop a theme that matched the existing buildings in the area, as well as Blaine's turn-of-the-century motif. I think we're pretty happy with the way that the plans ended up turning out. We wanted to find that balance between being durable in this rough environment under daily use with the fishermen, but also have some architectural appeal for the long-term presence in the area. These are just a few more photos showing some of the decay that's occurring. You can see that the paint is just flaking off and some of the plywood is rotted through. This is just a summary of the bid results. We had 3 contractors bid on this project, and Cadence Construction was the one with the lowest responsive bid. I should note that they are also the contractor right now on the BST Warehouse 2 roof. They're doing an excellent job on that, so we're pleased to have them on board for this project if that's what the commission chooses to do. Our total amount for this contract would be $509,000, and that would include a reallocation from a different Blaine Marinas project of about $84,000. And that project had a surplus. Are there any questions I can answer?
Well, I think it's super that we're doing this. It is the first or second thing you see when you drive in there, and it's been an eyesore for a long time. I am disappointed that we didn't have a local contractor that got it, but we have to put it out to bid to everyone, and there was quite a difference of almost $100,000. So, yeah, not quite 70,000. So I'm glad to see this finally coming to fruition. Commissioner Briscoe, I'm sorry, I should have asked you first. Do you have any comments?
No, that's okay. Yes, I do have a couple questions, actually, but yeah, I agree with you that I'm glad to see this is happening. It really needed to be done for quite some time. When we back up a minute, John, for the turn-of-the-century motif, what colors are we talking about here?
The colors that we selected are tan, blue, and gray. And if you'll bear with me, I will load a different drawing that will show you.
That's okay. I can't see it. I have no video here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I guess in reference to our port buildings that are there, is it the same colors?
Yes, we did go through the architectural drawings for the other buildings that were recently painted and sided, and so we're going to try to match those as closely as possible.
John, I wouldn't mind seeing the colors.
You would like to see those,
Yeah,
Commissioner?
I would.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see. How about you, Commissioner? Yeah.
So, John, I guess what you're saying for colors is it will be the same as the port office that's there and the gate buildings that are there?
Yes, sir. The
okay, very good. Very good.
Yeah, this is what I do every day, so it's always fun as the person who builds the stuff to make fun of the architects for what they chose for me to build. So I would love to
I just want to make sure that in my mind, all our port facility buildings need to match in color. There, we don't need to go off with a different color variation because the city of Blaine wants to do something different. That's kind of where I stand, and that's why I was curious what the colors were that were chosen to paint those buildings.
So these plans don't actually show the colors, but I can walk you through it briefly.
That's all right.
Okay, this flashing here and here will be blue. The siding here that's metal will be tan, and then the fiber cement hardy board that's down here will be gray, and then the doors will also be gray with tan accents.
Which are all the same colors as our existing buildings up there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
When will this be completed?
The contract gives them 90 days, but that was to allow quite a bit of lead time on the marine coating on the siding that we needed. The contractor has indicated that they might be able to get that faster. They think the work itself will take about a month.
So it'll be warm weather when it's finished.
That's been really important to us. We wanted to make sure that if they were applying paint and siding, that they were doing that on a dry, clear, warm day, preceded by the same as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Briscoe, any more questions?
What do they think their startup date may be?
They think that they're going to be mobilized onto the project in about 3 weeks. They've got their contract pretty much ready, as well as their insurance. Fortunately, they just went through that process on the BST project, so it should go smoothly. I think it's going to depend on what materials they decide to submit on as far as the siding go.
Okay, once again, I'll remind port staff of our fishing season. And you've got a crab season where everybody's going to be getting ready for that, starting probably the second week of September, as well as the fleets back from Alaska changing gear. So you'll run into that interaction with them trying to build and people trying to get stuff rigged out. So the sooner the better on their part.
Agreed, Commissioner. And we're going to be working in close contact with the Blaine Harbor Master, Andy Peterson, to minimize the impact to the tenants.
Very good, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
One quick comment. I see the word Tyvek. I I shiver when I say that word, but I'll leave it alone. And also, these roofs, I was actually mentioning this to Rob during the break. These are the kind of roofs that would be fantastic for us to take a look at, putting a living roof on top to help, especially in this environment, right there next to the water. It gives them a greater life. So I would encourage you folks to take a look at that, and as these start to age, if it would be a good idea to just to cover them with a living roof and squeeze a lot more life out of them that way.
That's an intriguing idea. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's all I got.
Okay, any other questions, Commissioner Briscoe?
No, I have none.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record show that passes 3-0. Diane, if you could read our second action item, please.
A motion to authorize the executive director to execute a contract with the Franklin Corporation of Ferndale, Washington for the Lignan Building renovation project in the amount of $1,406,035 plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized contract amount of $1,546,640.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Adam Fulton, Director of Facilities. We're talking about the Lignan Building, which, just for our viewing audience, anyone who doesn't know, if you come down Cornwall and turn in West Laurel, this is formerly the main entrance into the former Georgia Pacific Pulp and Paper Mill. Immediately on your right, as you enter on West Laurel, is what's been called the Lignan Building or Lignan Plant. This project was budgeted last year and is just now being executed per that budget. We are bringing this facility up to today's code so that it can be used for warehousing. Included with that are bringing utilities to the building. Interestingly, Georgia Pacific used to have their own power substation, their own water system, and so when those things got vacated, this building got basically cut off from those things. So we're utilizing some budget to bring utilities to the building, including gas, water, power, and repairing some of the siding, putting bathrooms in the building, repairing the vapor barrier on the inside, which will bring the insulation back to its original, which is R19 in the ceiling and R13 in the walls. We're supplementing the existing lights so that the lighting foot candles per, no, light candles per foot, what is that rating? Anyway, so that the lighting is sufficient to be a warehouse. We're distributing the electrical throughout. Putting in gas-fired overhead radiant heating. We're putting in the exhaust ventilation required by code. We're putting in a whole new sprinkler system, which has what's called an ESFR rating, which is early suppression fast release, which is very high rated. Basically what it means there is that it's going to allow us a tremendous amount of flexibility with that space and the uses we're allowed to have in there. As well as we are going through all of the doors. None of the doors work currently sufficient to today's code, so we're having to replace all of the person doors, and then doing some light cleanup around the exterior. It's a good project. Gets the building up to a rentable status as a warehouse, meeting today's code. I'd like to make sure the Commission understands it is not a complete renovation. We're not dolling up the building. I think the strategy is to get it up to a leasable code meeting facility, and then as it begins to cash flow on its own, to improve as necessary. Do the Commissioners have any questions about the improvements to the Lignan Building?
Commissioner Briscoe, any questions?
I do, Adam. I have one. Is the lighting we're putting in, is that going to be LED?
It is. It is. Interestingly, again, we're trying to do this as economically as possible, and it's a bit interesting in there because over the years, literally the power just got cut off to the building. So if you can imagine your house working just fine, and suddenly the power gets cut off to your house, and then you revisit the house 8 years later and put power back to the house, there's a question of what fixtures still work and which ones do not. And so we're actually able to reuse many of the existing fixtures. We've gone through and tested several of them, and they fire right back up. So it's going to be a combination, Commissioner, of the existing lights, which I believe are a high-pressure sodium, and supplementing that with new LED lights. We definitely envision in the future using these grants that are available through Puget Sound Energy to supplement the lighting further and get rid of anything that's not efficient.
Yeah, well, actually, that'll work quite well because your sodium valves take a while to warm up, but your LED gives you instant light, so
Yeah.
you can flip a switch and have some anyway. Okay, very good, Adam. Thank you. Nice presentation.
You're very welcome.
Commissioner McCauley.
Only one. Sure would like to see an expo hall in here, so, but this is a step. So.
Along those same lines, my question is, sure as heck we'll get this all done, and then some tenant will come in and want it a little bit different. The sprinkler will work for almost anything we anticipate that would be in there. We're not really putting any new walls in. The bathrooms can probably be used for anyone. I mean, I'm concerned that some user's going to come in and we're going to have to redo it to their specs.
The commissioner can rest assured that what we're putting in are all baseline items that we would do regardless. And I cannot think of a single thing we're doing in that building that would have to be changed or reversed out or would be money wasted or poorly spent. These are all base items that will be used to simply go forward. If there is another use that comes that's higher and bigger and better, these items will still all be required, and that's what we're doing.
So we're going to spend this $1.5 million and we still don't have a tenant lined up at this point.
I believe the commissioner is correct.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted that clarification. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions, commissioners?
No, it's been a long time coming. Thank you.
Hearing
I just like to point out that if we leave it the way it is, we're never going to get rented. So we're going to have to do something, and I believe that's why we're doing it. I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, Adam. Let the record show that action item passes 3-0. Our next item, item number 3, if you could, please, Diane.
A motion to authorize the executive director to negotiate on behalf of the Port of Bellingham with the top 3 selected and ranked firms for the retention and development of air service at the Bellingham International Airport.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sunil Harman, Director of Aviation. So the item before you is to authorize the executive director to enter into negotiations with 3 of the top firms that we've ranked out of 6. Our current air service development consultant, the contract expires end of August this year. So in anticipation of that, we issued requests for proposals in May. We received 6 responsive proposals. We ranked those proposals independently, 5 separate evaluators. And the criteria that we looked at was experience in developing air service, commercial air service, their ability to develop both domestic and international markets, size of their firm, the ability to meet schedules and budgets, their qualifications, and the proposed staff that they intended to apply to this contract, and then any minority, disadvantaged business, or small business certifications. So of the 3 firms, the top-ranking firm is Volar Aviation. They represent about 60 airports nationwide. The second is Mead & Hunt, Inc., and the third is Airbiz Aviation Strategies. That's a Vancouver-based firm. Our intention is to start to negotiate with the top, and if we are not successful in arriving at an acceptable price and service design, we'll move on to the next one, and so on. The recommendation before you is to approve the item, and we should have the new consultant ready to begin come September 1.
Okay. Any questions, Commissioner Briscoe?
I have none.
Commissioner McCauley?
So, when do we have a conversation? I'm not saying we, I'm saying we, the group. When do we have that conversation with these folks about this is what we've tried? Clearly, I think we've all pretty much lined up what we're after. But when do you do that, and how do we do that?
Well, remember that conversation can only occur once we have a contract in place. So we're going to bring a contract before you at some point with the successful consultant, at which point we'll look at scope design, and at that time we'll show them everything we've done in the past and the incentives we've offered and the markets that we've identified as our priority markets, both domestic and international. Mm-hmm. And at that time, we'll ask them to go back and evaluate other strategies to not only retain the current business, because there continues to be a hemorrhaging of seating capacity, both as a result of airline business model changes, but also because of pilot shortages and other factors that we really have very little control over. And the upside is that even though we've seen significant shrinkage in demand, the overall market has grown. So if you looked at the peak in 2013, combined, this region was generating about 13 million passengers who accessed air service. Today, that size of that market is 16.3 million. So our share of that market has diminished below 5%, but the overall market continues to grow. And the airlines continue to point at things that are macroeconomic issues like the exchange rate. So we're seeing some stabilization in the exchange rate. At least it's not as volatile as it used to be. With oil stabilizing, the Canada's Bank of Canada, which is equivalent to our Federal Reserve, is doing some quantitative easing. So the interest rates are up. Last 2 quarters, Canadian consumer confidence was viewed as being considerably up, both in terms of purchase of durable goods and new vehicles. So a lot of this is tracked by those indicators that consumer confidence is returning. The concern I have is that when you see an economic recovery, that rebound is not immediately evident in air service. Air service gets hit the hardest when there's an economic downturn, but is often the slowest to recover. And so we have to set the stage in the markets that we've identified to get some of this market share back that is obviously being served north of the border.
So I'm keen to have a conversation about pretty much anything that flies. Can it be at BLI? Because I don't think I ever have really had that conversation. I've talked about the airport industrial park and different uses for that and some things that I'd like to see happen there, but maybe we just need to get super creative and just think of, maybe we need a blimp. I don't know. It flies and you need an airport, I think. But, so anyway, I'd be interested in having a conversation with you and certainly when the new team comes on board to be like, let's get way out of our boxes and think about whatever. Because we can count on, I think you're going to be able to count on these, a number of passengers are going to fly, right? But we clearly need more revenue than that minimum number.
I have a couple of questions. One, who are the committee members that served on this committee? It looks like there were 5 of them that scored it.
4 airport operations supervisors and myself.
All from BLI?
Yeah.
And have you ever worked with any of these companies that were put in bids?
Personally, I worked with 4 of the 6 companies.
Because you've had an extensive aviation career, and so you know firsthand 4 of them.
Yes.
Okay. And have you ever worked with the number 1 pick that you've chosen?
I have. In fact, they brought in Allegiant to the airport that I was at. We worked together to draw Allegiant. It was a $3.5 million incentive package that drew Allegiant. It wasn't good market dynamics. I mean, at the end of the day, whether or not that's sustainable. See, I'm not in big favor of providing those sorts of incentives because once they run out, then the airline leaves.
Well, thank you. Okay, any other questions, Commissioner Briscoe?
Well, I did have one for Commissioner Bacali. What color blimp were you considering?
What color?
Yeah.
I don't care.
Okay. No, I have no I have no further
Could you
questions.
imagine having a blimp
Commissioner
hanger
Roberts.
here? Wouldn't that be? Can you imagine having a blimp hanger? That'd be amazing. These things are huge.
As long as it's a fish blimp, it's got to be shaped like a fish.
Fish? I don't know. Sounds good to me. Sunil, you just said something, and I appreciate that you said it, and you said it out loud, and that the incentives thing, because I don't disagree, and I think the taxpayers here in this county would 100% agree with you that the incentives might be nice, but you know, what do you get for it, and can you recover it? And when it runs out, will the service leave? So thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record show that passes 3-0. Next item is, and last item is new business, unless anyone has anything else. Do you have anything, Commissioner, under Briscoe, under new business?
No, I do not.
Commissioner McCauley?
Two quick things. Food trucks, is that conversation moving forward? Not the one in Blaine, but just in general.
Alan, you want to give us a quick update on that? Thanks.
Alan Birdsall, Manager of Marinas. Great question, Commissioner. We are in the process of working with the Washington State Food Truck Association. Terry Elahi with real estate and myself have met with the president of the executive director of the association, and we're looking to get Food Truck Friday hopefully started the first Friday in August through September. Wow. 2 trucks every Friday from 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and the association will manage all of that. And so we're in the process of putting together a use agreement, finishing out the fine details. We got one hiccup, and that's on September 22nd, which is the setup for Sea Feast. So we're looking at an alternative location, but we're targeting the parking strip between the upland storage at Squalicum and Squalicum Boathouse, but towards the corner of the upland storage. 2 trucks angled parked in there. Lines will extend out into Zwanich Point Park. We've talked to Carol Williams. She's got no problem with that. So everything's looking very positive to move this forward for an 8-week pilot, see how it works, and then see where we go next year with it.
Cool. Right on. Thank you.
I have a question, if I could, Commissioner McCauley. Did that pilot program, did I hear you correctly, Alan, that's for Squalicum Harbor only?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it was requested by the association. It was requested actually by the food truck vendors. They've got a very similar program going down at the Port of Everett that was requested by the Navy base and has been working very successfully. So some of the professional food truck vendors locally said, hey, can we do something here in Bellingham for that?
Is this a regional association, or is it local, or?
It's a statewide association.
Statewide?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have we, any of the tenants know about this? Is there any pushback from anyone?
I don't know if real estate has done the outreach on it at this point, but we anticipate a little bit. But what they're finding out in Everett is they're setting this up right across the street from Anthony's in Everett, and Anthony's have been able to log and identify increased business. And what they're finding out is the people who are coming in to go to the food trucks, hey, Anthony's is here. We didn't know they were here, and they come back the following weekend or some other time with their family. And they're really 2 different kind of demands. Somebody who wants a sit-down meal is going to go sit down. Somebody who wants a burger and sit out in the park is not going to go to a restaurant. So we see it as very favorable. Plus the association, what they're doing in Everett and they're willing to do here. If there's any of the brick and mortar restaurants that want to have a food vendor coupon, thanks for going by the food vendor, 10% off for whatever the brick and mortar place is, the food vendors will be more than happy to hand those out. They really want to be good partners with the surrounding businesses going on.
What are there? 2 brick and mortars that would be affected at Squalicum?
I believe. Well, we got the Web Locker and
the Web
then
House and the Web Locker and
yeah, Web Locker and Bella Marina.
Any of you heard from them at all?
No.
Okay.
No, not at this point.
Yeah, I think that food trucks typically have different menus than sit-down restaurants anyway. So it's, yeah, I know there was some reticence in the past to entertain this, so I'm excited that the state association has weighed in and alleviated some of those fears, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Price point typically
Totally
quite a bit,
different.
yeah.
Good.
And one last thing I want to put in is that once we get this established, it won't be the same trucks all the time. Anybody who's interested in doing it will sign up on the calendar, and so we'll have hopefully a different mix of trucks every Friday.
Yeah, super cool. Thank you. And the other thing, a few months ago, a woman came and asked about our bench program. Have we done anything at all on that? I keep forgetting to bring it up, and I remembered this morning.
Yeah, I mean, this question comes up all the time, and we don't really have a bench program anymore. You know, we probably would have 50 plus people for every bench that we had in demand. But as we do approach new benches, I believe we keep a list somewhere, and we grab people's names and knock the next one off the list. The city has a similar program. They go through more benches than we do because they have more parks than we do. But I can't remember the last time we added a bench. I'm not sure it's even been the last 9 years. So we don't have an official program, but we do get the question quite a bit.
I had a thought on that bench program. What it's been a long time since I really looked at the benches. Is it a plaque on the bench? Is that what we have?
Yeah, it's typically how it used to work. Is the individuals would pay for the bench and they'd get a plaque on the bench with their names on it.
Okay, I was just thinking maybe we could go into a rotational plaque thing to maybe a couple of plaques to a bench and then rotate names to appease, or not appease, I shouldn't say that. I apologize for saying appease, to get folks' names rotating through a remembrance thing until we can do something different.
That may be a good solution going forward. I think you'd have a hard time doing that retro because people have paid for the bench. But certainly going forward, as we add new benches, we could contemplate putting 2, maybe even 3 plaques on that bench.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Colley, anything else?
No, if anybody calls and wants a big chair and wants to sponsor me,
You
Send them your way.
I'll put a plaque on it.
There you go.
I've just got 2 items. One, I took a tour today of the Linden Water Treatment Plant, and they got some EDI money that we were involved in, and that is quite the state of the art. I was really impressed. Sylvia was there as well, and I really enjoyed the tour, and it only created 2 jobs. It's run by 2 people in there, but it's a real nice facility. And the other question I had, I get a lot of the general public asking me, they thought the roads were going to be in for our waterfront district. And I was wondering if the staff would consider maybe giving us an update on what's going on in the waterfront district, even if it means there's no change at each of our meetings.
Brian, can you give us a quick update on the streets?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental Programs. Yeah, and we certainly can do more updates on the Waterfront District if you'd like. But we did get news just last week that the city, my understanding is that the city has received all of their permits for the Granary and Laurel streets. So that's a really big victory in the sense there was a couple hangups that apparently have been resolved and worked through all that, and they anticipate having 100% design in their hands here by the end of the month, with going out to bid in mid-August for those roads. So the construction activity should be starting up here late summer, early fall.
So if it starts up in late summer, we're only two months late from what we originally planned. Is that correct?
That's correct. And those schedules are always a little fluid, as you know. I mean, as you go multi-year planning, I think we'd hoped to be under construction right now. But as that progressed, yeah, we're not too far off target.
Good. I appreciate that update. I don't need one every time, man. It's just a lot of the general public was thinking this summer they would see road construction down there in a park pretty soon, and they keep asking, and if we could just keep them updated, and I think you just did.
Sure, and I can work with the city team too to see if they can do some outreach on to make that a little more public once it's really locked in.
I thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Go to the order, Commissioner Briscoe.
No.
Commissioner McCauley.
No, sir.
We are adjourned.